Look, NVIDIA really has established itself as the gold standard here, Frank, when it comes to these AI chips. And I just want to let yourself and some viewers in on some of the conversations I've had over the past 2 days. I was in Paris at an AI conference. I was speaking to founders. I was speaking to investors. And a lot of my questions were about NVIDIA. It was about NVIDIA's dominance. And I was speaking to a lot of these companies that are building the data centers that are using NVIDIA's chips. And I said, hey, look, there's all these startups that are coming up looking at the chip game right now, trying to challenge NVIDIA. How are they getting on? And a lot of these builders of these data centers were saying, hey, we're just using NVIDIA. We only want to use NVIDIA. We're going to continue to use NVIDIA. And one investor was saying that actually a lot of this is because this is a proven technology. It's got the lock-in with both the hardware and the software. And a lot of these data centers aren't willing to take a risk on new hardware right now in the form of some of these startups. So that was a very interesting point of view I heard around how NVIDIA has managed to maintain that dominance. And I think that speaks to why NVIDIA has been managed to hit that $4 trillion market cap, Frank.
I also want to get your take on what our Jim Cramer said last night on Mad Money about NVIDIA and potentially it having more room to run to the upside.
The Chinese, though, they seem to want only one thing from us. They want NVIDIA chips, not even the best ones. And you know what? They're right to covet them. These chips hold the key to the new industrial revolution. Sometimes NVIDIA seems like our only bargaining chip with China, but it's a big one, bigger than anything they have. We've got the cards because NVIDIA makes the cards.
Arjun, your take on this and the idea that NVIDIA's dominance when it comes to AI chips is a key bargaining chip, not only for NVIDIA as it tries to, grow business, but for the U.S. as well.
Yeah, I think, look, when you look at the Chinese tech stack right now, they are finding it incredibly difficult to replicate what NVIDIA does. Not just NVIDIA, but the entire semiconductor supply chain. That's been a big problem for China. And so there is no doubt that Chinese tech companies would love to get their hands on any kind of NVIDIA chip at this point. However, I do think at this point the direction of travel in China has changed. Even if NVIDIA were to bring a chip to the market, it's likely going to be less advanced than what it's selling to other customers at this point. And I think what you are seeing in China is a direction of travel, recognizing that the geopolitics has changed, the tech situation has changed, and they are very much pushing along the road of trying to produce their own technology. Yes, they're probably not going to have in the near term something as efficient or as powerful as NVIDIA, but they don't mind that at this point because they're using some of these homegrown methods to try to replicate some of that NVIDIA power, Frank.
All right, so Jack, all morning long we've been talking about NVIDIA crossing that $4 trillion mark, just a tick below last time we checked, but still very close to $4 trillion. That march happened pretty fast from 3 to 4. What does that signal about AI and the AI trade here in the U.S.?
We're seeing a number of signals, Frank. First of all, TSMC just released earnings about 20 minutes ago, and they had about a 39% increase in their revenue, and so they beat all their numbers. Another indicator of the strength of this AI market. You're seeing demand from the big players and also from sovereigns and others for these kinds of chips. My prediction is that NVIDIA and Microsoft will cross the $5 trillion mark, Frank, in the next 12, 18 months. I see no impediment to that happening. If we're in the current geopolitical general framework, I think we can easily see $5 trillion for those two companies. With TSMC's rise now, they now just joined the $1 trillion club. They're just at that hovering point of $1 trillion market cap. And that means there's now 10 different companies in the world today worth $1 trillion or more. So it's really exciting, Frank, to see all this movement.
Jack, I don't know if we ever asked you this. Are you an NVIDIA customer? Do you buy their chips? And I was actually talking to Dan Ives from Wedbush yesterday. He says there's basically 10 to 1 demand. There's 10 customers that want a chip for every chip that's actually available.
We're very fortunate, Frank, in that we're a special NVIDIA partner. Just spent time with Jensen yesterday, and we use the DGX Cloud. DGX Cloud is the way to use NVIDIA chips that are the latest chips. As you know, right now, there's Hoppers out there, but there's also Blackwells, and now upcoming will be the Vera Rubin chip. And so the way to access the latest and greatest from NVIDIA is the DGX Cloud, and we're fortunate to be a partner. And in fact, Frank, we just announced with NVIDIA 10 days ago, the initial results of that partnership is the largest data set for the biopharma world, 5 million plus molecules that we characterize using our SandboxAQ software on NVIDIA DGX hardware. That's a breakthrough, Frank, for the biopharma world, developing drugs for cancer, Alzheimer's, other major diseases.
Jack, you're bearing the lead on us. You were with Jensen Huang yesterday. What were you guys doing? Were you popping champagne, wearing leather jackets? Don't even answer. I want to get to some more important stuff for investors.
Jim, NVIDIA, we're waiting for maybe some comments on the tape from Jensen, who, by the way, whose wealth might eclipse Buffett's today, depending on how the stock trades.
And he will not change. It's just, I got to tell you, the stock's coming in. Heretics are selling. But I do think that Jensen is unchanging. He is, to me, the same Jensen. I've tried to get him off his game and be the Jensen that everyone thinks he's going to be. It's just I've never been able to, not for a minute.
We did assemble a piece of tape. I think this is you talking about the stock in 2011.
Yeah,
Take a listen to this.
Liked it. It's a tech rally, and I would put all my chips in tech. As we said, the stocks is leading.
All your chips and chips.
All my chips and chips.
All your chips and chips.
I like potato chips, Pringles. I have Diamond Foods,
exactly.
and I like actual chips. This is a chip rally like you wouldn't believe. NVIDIA
bullish
goes to
on chips,
20.
all sorts of chips.
NVIDIA goes to 20.
Okay, you heard it here. NVIDIA goes to 20.
And I don't think that accounts for the split.
No, the stock was like 20 cents. I've been a believer for a very long time in the company, and I remember I was looking at tape yesterday. I had a critic pretty much the whole way, someone who kind of made fun of me, and at one point said to me, "Will you stop talking about it?" Hi, David. Welcome back. Do you remember when you very famously said, "You've got to stop talking about NVIDIA"? The people are bored with NVIDIA, which was about at 1 when it was like at 10.
Was it at 10?
Yeah. You just had it. Jim, shut up about NVIDIA.
When was that? Like 2017? When was that?
It was when I came back with that. My dog had the picture that had gotten.
Oh, you got the ID,
yeah,
the dog.
I showed the ID, which was that Jensen had given me, and you said, "That's it, I'm done. I never want to hear about it again." And it was probably like around 9.
It's true.
But
I don't remember that, but I assume it was true because I have told you that many times. That said, I also have sat here many times and praised the greatest long-term call that you've ever made.
You have repeatedly said that, Jim, this was it. I've never seen anybody like it. That was great. And I thank you. You've been...
And listen, you've also had it along the way occasionally, and sometimes you had some caution here on NVIDIA.
Well, because there was... When the president was adamant that they take the charge... Well, they had taken $4.5 billion charge from China. I mean, that was not...
No, that was suboptimal, as you like to say.
It was suboptimal. Now, recently, last Friday, they made the president said, okay, to Cadence and Synopsys, they're 2 of NVIDIA's greatest partners. So there's always a belief that perhaps there's something lurking there. Now, Jensen is going to China, but the president has... The president, I think, is drawing the line because he thinks they can be militarized, can be weaponized.
Right. We do have an upgrade of AMD today at HSBC. The title of the report's back in the game, and they take their target from 100 to 200.
Well, look, there's room for another GPU, and Lisa Su's got one. And look, this market is so strong, it can take another GPU, and that's probably a very, this is a very big comeback. Initially, they didn't have the product, and now they do.
Right.
AI is now able to reason. It's able to think. Before, it was able to understand. It was able to generate content. But now it can reason. It could do research. It could go learn about the latest information before it answers the question. And so now it can solve problems that it has never been trained to solve, which is the ability for human reasoning. And the capability of the technology, of course, is overwhelmingly exciting. It can do bad things, but the things that it could do is overwhelmingly good.
All right, that's Jensen Huang on Morning Joe a few moments ago, Jim.
Yeah, this is the beginning of the... it can be a fourth-year associate at a law firm. It could be an auditor. It can do things that are... you can argue with it. You can question it. And it's finally there. And I think that what Jensen's saying is this iteration is the iteration where it's not a dumb... you put in a prompt and it gives you an answer. This is the one where you say, look, I think that it's one of the lawsuits that has precedent is blah. And it comes back and says, well, actually, no. The more likely precedent is X.
And the reasoning capabilities, I think there are still some who question the ability of these models to truly do them effectively.
Right.
but obviously it only improves over time, and then it gets to this more existential question we've discussed in terms of what that's going to mean for employment, what that's going to mean for laws.
It's going to be a big deal because
for associates at law
maybe
firms.
Lower price jobs. But I know a couple law firms that are using. I'm getting this person on the CEO of a private company that has a terrific product that a lot of the law firms are now using, and it is going to be upend many professions.
Going to need a lot of power. That's what we're really going to need.
Yep.
A lot of power.
It's accelerated computing. Remember, it's two things. It's not just generative.
No,
it's accelerated computing. And that's why we need all the data centers. But Jensen's right. And you see in
AI
Stanford robotics, they can make it so that does it. It can make you tea. It can bring you the paper. Do whatever you want. Look, it's happening right now. Okay, it's happening right now because this chip is so good. And the next iteration, look, there are going to be replacements everywhere.
Boosted by NVIDIA, which just became the first company to hit $4 trillion in market cap. Joining us now here at Post 9 is Tom Lee, Fundstrat Global Advisors, Head of Research, and Fundstrat Capital, Chief Investment Officer, also a CNBC contributor. Good to have you, Tom. So how are you, if we could just take a step back, how are you thinking about the whole NVIDIA phenomenon at $4 trillion against this backdrop of just broad AI demand, as well as just appetite in the market for kind of this risk-on sentiment as made evident by the Bitcoin move?
Well, to me, NVIDIA being the most valuable company in the S&P makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's scarce. I mean, how many NVIDIAs are there in the world, right? There's 50,000 stocks. There's one NVIDIA. And so it is scarcer than, like, Da Vinci. So I do think the multiple at around 30 times is actually not that extended, given how important they are to the AI ecosystem. So I think there's earnings visibility, and then there's multiple expansion potential.
Multiple expansion potential for NVIDIA, as well as just the broader NASDAQ from here. Do you think there are significant catalysts to the upside?
Yeah, I think to the extent that there's companies that are producing durable, sustained earnings growth, whether it's the Palantirs or the NVIDIAs or the Teslas of the world, they do deserve higher multiples. And something that we've been writing about is how this market endured 6 essentially black swans in the last 5 years, thrived in terms of earnings. Normally, we would assign a higher market multiple to that. And believe it or not, the mean S&P PE, so if you do the S&P equal weight, was 17.9 on the eve of COVID. It's about 0.7 turns lower today. We're like at a 16 mean multiple, meaning the market got cheaper after 6 black swans. I almost think we should be expanding that PE.
There are some complaints this morning about, again, market concentration, right? When you got the top 10, is it 40% of market cap? Something. NVIDIA alone's almost 8%.
That's right. But then again, these exact companies are a huge share of earnings growth, So I think that the S&P is benefiting from the fact that it is sitting at the center of AI, which is a huge global driver of CapEx spend. It's going to help S&P earnings. And then the other piece is, of course, financial innovation, which is taking place. I mean, Circle and the cryptos have shown that that's another piece where there's a lot of earnings growth. And again, that's a growing share of the S&P.
The president should have gone even one better, Jason. I mean, NVIDIA's up 88% since the April low. It's even more impressive of what has happened. And by the way, as that stock got within 3 cents of another new high, and maybe it actually did hit it now, it was reiterated sell today. $100 is the target. Seaport Research, that's a 38% downside from here. What do you think about that? I mean, we've had some calls on some high-flying stocks of late to maybe take some of the, and some of the analysts might froth off, but I don't know what you think about this call.
Fine. Seaport's been busy over the last couple of weeks. I think they also downgraded Netflix recently. So what I would say about that call, first of all, data center momentum is still very much intact. Growing demand for sovereign AI. We've seen that with all the Middle East deals. And this Blackwell Ultra chip, from a production standpoint, is 50% stronger than the last iteration of it. So when I look at sales going forward, again, we saw a double in 24 and 25, right? Sales rising 52% in 2026, 22% in 2027. So yes, there is somewhat of a slowdown, but in my view, they still are the flag runner here, and I think that from an innovations perspective, they're still very much motivated to continue to run the story the way they have.
5 to 10% for stocks by year end from here. That Piper today says their latest CIO survey reinforced a bullish spending backdrop for AI infrastructure, i.e. CapEx, right? They raised their price target on Microsoft to 600. It was 475 prior. They raised their estimates. They upgrade Oracle to overweight. 270 is the price target. 190 was prior. If you look at the performance of AI infrastructure stocks since the April low, it's the power providers. It is the cloud providers. It is Dell, Bryn up 76%. It is Vistra and Vertiv up 90 and 87% respectively. It is Constellation up 68%, Arista and Marvell, and that's just to name a handful and an extra one. But that's where the money is. You go where the money's going, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that from the CapEx spend, I mean, we already know, we talked about this the other day, when Mark Zuckerberg is paying multiple engineers $100 million signing bonuses, CapEx is, I think, going to continue to ramp up. And so, Satya talks about being with the spend having like a high ROI, which is great. I think investors want to hear that. But I think with these big hyperscalers, the spend is just going to continue. I think that's why CoreWeave bought Core Scientific, because they need to control energy to build more. And so I do think, NVIDIA's numbers don't come out till the end of August, but over the next couple of weeks, we're going to hear from all the hyperscalers, and I think they're going to reaffirm the spend. And you can list off those names again, or look at those names. All those names you just listed, the Vistra, the Dell, Oracle, et cetera, are going to be the beneficiaries of those. And I think, so you're going to continue to see that.
Dan, what do you think? I mean, $4 trillion, we're putting so much credence in this for NVIDIA. Does it matter that much? Does it point us in any direction going forward?
Sure. It points in the direction that I think a lot of folks who've been invested in the name for, the last 3 years know that it's been a monopoly. They have 90% of high-end GPUs. We know that all of their big customers are clamoring for those GPUs. They've been tripping over each other for years now. And then you have, some of these sovereigns, who might get more exposure to them after we kind of work through some of these export bans. I mean, listen, NVIDIA to me is no longer the story. The story is how it broadens out from some of their customers, and then the customers that are basically going to be disrupted by the technology that comes out of the backside of this, right? So you keep hearing about AI agents. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to replace a lot of automated tasks, right? A lot of data entry and that sort of thing. Per seat licenses. This has been a huge trend for like 15 years. These SaaS companies, right? And the model has been something that people have really enjoyed. The companies have had higher valuations than lots of other different software models. Well, all of a sudden, if they are basically being attacked by the idea of these AI agents, they don't exist yet. And that's a really important part about it. But if you look at a company like Salesforce, they have severely lagged, right? That's a big component of the IGV. Yeah. If you look at like Adobe, I mean, Adobe can't get out of its own way. A company like Figma that they tried to buy a couple years ago is coming at their core competency, and they're using a better technology to do it. So that, to me, is what's going on with software. But if you look at semis, it's really being dragged up by NVIDIA and Taiwan Semi, and that's been the story for the last 2 years.
Dan, if you're looking at these names, semis versus software, and you're looking at them as group, and there is some kind of a macro shock or a disruption, are you more protected in one than the other?
Well, I think semis for now. I mean, I think that there's so few other companies that have actually competed with NVIDIA. If you think about it, AMD has actually been losing share. We don't even know like what they're doing and who their customers are and how they're competing one way or another. And, but AMD's kind of worked higher since the April lows. So is there comfort in NVIDIA? Maybe. I think a lot of folks have kind of pointed to the valuation relative to where it was 2 years ago. But here's a company 5 years ago that was doing $20 billion in sales, and it's up 10x now. I mean, the stock price, obviously the market cap is up like that too, at this $4 trillion number. But I think there's probably places within the semis that will play some catch up. I know a lot of folks were kind of into this custom silicon sort of play. This is against NVIDIA, and it's from some of NVIDIA's biggest customers. That's Microsoft, it's Amazon, it's Google, and Meta. They're all, contracting with these Marvel and Broadcom to build specific chips for specific tasks. But I think as we get further into this trade, we see where the hyperscalers are going. We see where they're spending. Once these models are all trained up, then you get into this inference phase, and that might be another phase, like the way investors think about valuations in some of these names. So again, I don't think any of it's safe, because what's going on here, make no mistake about it, there is a bubble. And I don't mean like 2000 bubble. I don't mean like, there's all these companies that, were pre-earnings and this and that, whatever, but there's a bubble and enthusiasm about this theme, and it's yet to really play out, I think, at a broad base.
Right, so we're just trading on sort of enthusiasm, but we haven't seen real results. We don't really know what the future looks like.
They've been very limited. I'll let you guys kind of speak to that. Because
real quick, in terms of going back to NVIDIA and some of the semis, you have to, at this price to sales, which is now north of 16 times next year's revenue for NVIDIA, you have to believe almost by definition that margins are going to hang in there at the levels they are now, because if you start to see the margin contraction, that price to sales, which clearly nobody cares about right now, I think people start to focus on.
Hang on just for a second. We have a news alert coming to us from Washington, D.C. with Megan Casella. Megan, what's the latest?
Hey, Court. So NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is at the White House this afternoon. He had been set to meet with President Trump. We had confirmed that earlier based on a source familiar. Now I think we have some video. Yeah, here he is. Just a few minutes ago, towards the top of the hour, he's walking in to the West Wing here. You can see him walking by that Marine. Now, I was not able to get any details on what the two men would be meeting about, what the agenda was going to be for this meeting. But it does come, of course, just a couple of hours after NVIDIA closed for the first time above $4 trillion. And then after earlier today, the president posted about NVIDIA on Truth Social, saying NVIDIA is up 47% since Trump tariffs. So tariffs, export controls, the upcoming trip to China, a lot for these two men to talk about this afternoon, Court.
All right, I hope you're all doing great today. NVIDIA finished the day 0.75% higher, and today marks the first day ever that NVIDIA has closed above a $4 trillion market cap. NVIDIA surpassed $4 trillion in yesterday's trading session, but today is the first time NVIDIA has closed above $4 trillion in market cap. As I said in yesterday's video, I expect to see multiple more trillions added to NVIDIA's market cap over the next 5 years. We have multiple pieces of NVIDIA news to talk about in today's video, starting with multiple reports that Jensen Huang will be traveling to China in the near future to speak with leaders. Yesterday, the Financial Times reported this, and now Bloomberg is as well. The Financial Times also claimed that NVIDIA will be launching a new chip in the Chinese market that is compliant with export controls starting this September. Earlier this week, Bloomberg reported that China is constructing multiple data centers consisting of NVIDIA GPUs. I do wonder if perhaps there is some overlap in these stories, and maybe some Chinese companies are preparing for a new China chip from NVIDIA later this year. I don't know if that's what's happening here, but the timing is interesting. In other news today, HSBC increased their price target for AMD, with one analyst saying they think AMD's latest GPUs are competitive with NVIDIA's Blackwell. I want to remind you all that NVIDIA's competitive mode is very strong, as they have taken a total system approach and are driving efficiencies at every component of the system, not just the GPU. You can only improve an accelerator such as the GPU so much before you start to run into bottlenecks in other parts of the system. To work around this problem, NVIDIA develops at every component of the system, both hardware and software. Jensen Huang has spoken about this topic in the past, saying that if another company develops a faster chip than NVIDIA's, it really doesn't concern NVIDIA, because the chip is just one component of the system. Additionally, it's important to remember that NVIDIA has a massive advantage in their CUDA software offerings. CUDA is the go-to choice for many, many developers, and it is substantially better than AMD's ROCm. The world is currently in an AI race to develop the best models and applications as fast as possible. With this in mind, many developers are not going to want to take the risk of using an inferior system with lesser software offerings. They want to have the assurance that what they build will run and run efficiently. NVIDIA provides this through their CUDA platform, and it is a massive advantage for NVIDIA maintaining their competitive mode. Please do not misunderstand me here. I'm not hating on AMD, and I actually think there's room for both NVIDIA, AMD, and others to all succeed, as there is so much demand right now. Additionally, AMD is making impressive progress in various areas, and so I don't want to come across as negative on AMD, because I'm not. I think both companies can and will succeed in this AI revolution. Now let's talk about TSMC's June revenue report that was released this morning. As a reminder, TSMC manufactures NVIDIA's chips. Today, TSMC reported June revenue that was 17.7% lower than the previous month, but 26.9% higher year over year. Month-over-month decreases in TSMC's revenue is a very normal occurrence. What's important is that the overall trend continues moving in the right direction, and TSMC is still seeing very strong revenue against the backdrop of rising demand from NVIDIA and others. I continue to be bullish on the long-term future of NVIDIA. I seriously think this company has more runway ahead of it. I'm not just bullish because the stock is going up and hitting new all-time highs. I was bullish on the long-term future of NVIDIA, even as the stock was moving lower earlier this year when it was sub $100 per share. I'm not just bullish because the price is going up. up. Rather, I'm bullish on the long-term future of NVIDIA because of the strong fundamentals, both financial and technological. Blackwell has ramped swiftly, representing 70% of NVIDIA's data center revenue in Q1. Blackwell Ultra has just recently launched, with CoreWeave reporting the deployment of the first GB300 system just last week. Blackwell Ultra is essentially an upgrade of the chips and other internal components of the Blackwell system. It's not a complete system overhaul like Blackwell, which means we are substantially less likely to see delays in Blackwell Ultra's rollout. And it also means that Blackwell Ultra should ramp much faster than Blackwell did. After Blackwell has ramped, we should see margins return to the mid 70% range late this fiscal year, as NVIDIA forecasted. I really like the setup for NVIDIA in the second half of this year. We have a clear data center product roadmap that stretches all the way into 2028. In 2026, we should start to see shipments of NVIDIA's next generation Vera Rubin. The Vera CPU will be NVIDIA's first ever custom CPU built to work in lockstep with the GPU. And the Rubin GPU will, of course, provide substantial improvements compared to Blackwell. NVIDIA maintains their competitive moat across the entire stack, both hardware and software. And NVIDIA's software offerings in CUDA is a massive advantage for NVIDIA, as it is widely recognized and the go-to choice for many developers. I think that NVLink Fusion actually strengthens NVIDIA's competitive moat, as it increases the likelihood that customers will remain within NVIDIA's ecosystem. NVIDIA is delivering performance upgrades that are so substantial that their customers have no choice but to continue purchasing NVIDIA's latest products in large quantities. NVIDIA is bringing AI to the world's enterprise IT, which Jensen believes is an opportunity worth hundreds of billions of dollars. NVIDIA has massive sovereign AI deals both in the Middle East and Europe, and NVIDIA will play a crucial role in the future of quantum computing. Jensen told us at GTC Paris that NVIDIA is working with just about everyone in the quantum industry on NVIDIA's CUDA-Q platform, and that the next generation supercomputers will have a QPU assigned with QPUs connected to GPUs. Just as NVIDIA used their GPUs to speed up CPUs, they're now going to do the same thing with QPUs. Jensen thinks that the world's computing capex will reach $1 trillion annually by 2030. If he is correct, then NVIDIA should be worth substantially more in the years ahead than it is today. Remember to stay calm in this market. Remember to maintain a long-term perspective and do not make any hasty or irrational decisions. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.